let's get started. Welcome to the presentation on configuring the CIM Project Suite for your standards. My name is Brian Lewandowski. I'll be doing the presentation today. I am the Civil Product Manager here at CTC, so I oversee the creation of all these products and also connect with the industry and you guys on how best to use them and implement them for your organizations. So the CIM Project Suite, what is it? It's a whole bunch of productivity tools for Civil 3D. All of those areas in Civil 3D where there are gaps that's difficult to use, clumsy to use. It could be in grading and corridors. We have a whole series of tools there. Pipe networks, enhancing how those tools work. Sheet production, from labeling, to QTO and legends, to plan and profile sheet production. Many of our tools totally improve how Civil 3D works in that way. And of course, there's a few tools for survey or general use as well. And the point of this webcast is that customizing this stuff or just a little bit of configuration definitely allows for the best use of the tools. You guys are paying for these products. Why not get the best use out of them, right? I liken it to a lot of perhaps new Civil 3D users out there. They might have Civil 3D on their machine, but they're still mostly drawing polylines in it, right? It's the same thing with our solutions. We want to best leverage them in your daily projects and daily use. So that's what this is about today. So there'll be a little bit of assumption that you know a little bit about the tools. I'm not going to go into demoing how each of these tools work. We'll touch on that as it makes sense. Yeah, the kind of prerequisite is that you're a little bit familiar with the tools. Not necessarily daily use, but at least the point of the tools. So configuring the CIM Project Suite, there's three kind of major categories I want to touch on here. One are app settings. This is default behavior for a given tool. Take one of the tools like AutoGrader. What are the default format styles, like default feature line styles? There's some settings in here about when you're doing surface targeting with AutoGrader. What are some of those default settings? You have similar kind of stuff in the settings tab of Civil 3D. It's quite similar here. There are app templates. This is where you can save a set of design parameters out to be used in some other situation. For example, in AutoGrader, again, I might have standard pond or curve or lot designs that get reused drawing after drawing, project after project, or from one user to the next. There's no need to kind of program or build out those design parameters every time. You can simply save them out to external files. We use a JSON file format. It's a standard format for all of these, and it will cover some of that. And then finally, your actual Civil 3D template settings, your DWT or DWTs that your drawings are made from. There are a few layer style block considerations to do there as well. So let's start with app settings. These are options in the application, as well as the last use settings, like how was the app set the last time you used it. Those things save into app user settings. So these settings right here, this isn't a per drawing setting, this is application. It saves all of this each time the app closes to an external XML file. They're just universal XML files. They save into the user app data folder. And depending on what apps you've used, it will create a folder as well as an XML file in it for each of those applications. This entire set of folders here and XML files within can be deployed. This is how you deploy a customization of the CIM Project Suite. So in the same way you might deploy some registry edits for a profile or deploy an ARG along with all of your custom templates and things like that. There's a lot to Civil 3D, right? CIM Project Suite is fairly simple. How you deploy it, those custom settings, the first part of it is deploying this folder here. So the key apps, now every app leverages these last use or these user app settings, but some of them, it doesn't play a big role. It's like where the user left the window last time they used it. They put it on the left side of their screen, something like that. That's not really important to standardize and deploy to users. Yet other applications, some of the key ones, and we'll go over these, there are a number of those settings where it's important to configure them to fully leverage them across your entire user base and make sure everyone's using them the best way possible. App templates. This is saving design parameters for a particular app to an external file. I mentioned that it's a JSON file. And the point of this is to transfer it to other projects. Here's Pipe Planner. Maybe I've got a standard manhole schedule or something like that, or maybe an Excel export for running storm analysis. Okay, I can save out templates and reload those at any time. And I can save those templates perhaps on a server location where all users can access that stuff. It might be kind of per project, or it might be kind of a standard across the whole group or the whole company. Not all apps support or need the use of these app templates. There's 5 key ones, those are here, and we'll jump into those into Civil 3D in some more detail as well. And finally, the third section, Civil 3D template settings, or actual DWTs, okay? There's a few layers and styles that can be defined, as well as some blocks with one of the apps that really kind of help this along. And the apps that really benefit from this, and I say benefit because you don't have to do it. It's just, it's going to make things a bit easier for your users if those templates already have the correct layers or styles that aid in the workflow that you are using. Either you as kind of a supporting role, or if you in a daily production role. It's important to understand that. All right, let's go into Civil 3D and take a look at some of this. We're first going to start with app settings. That was the options window within a given application. One of the first ones I want to mention, and I really just want to kind of give you guys recommendations along the way here, as well as just making you familiar with where these settings are, because what I'm going to recommend isn't going to work for everyone, but it's just kind of an example of what you might do. So every application has an options button. This is where you get to the app settings. Okay, you notice when I open this drawing or this application, this drawing, this data populated. Okay, that was remembered for this drawing. That's a drawing specific thing, but there are app-wide settings, and some of them are very simple, like have the app remember its position and size each time it's opened, and then some formatting options, as well as pipe depth calculations. So in some previous webcasts, I've shown how you can generate automated pipe depth reports with Pipe Planner. Okay, if you have some standards on that for your organization, you can set that up here. Or maybe it varies from project to project and you're generating those reports multiple times. Set it in here, and then each time you run the pipe depth option, it will use these default parameters in there. If we take a look at Pipe Designer, this is a powerful tool that allows us to design pipe runs in just a few clicks. Pipe Designer has a few key settings and options I would recommend you customize as well. So if you're a single user just trying to set CIM Project Suite up best for your own use, just come into here and make these settings, and that's it. Okay. If you're in a supporting role where you're trying to configure this stuff and then deploy it to a team of people, do the same thing. Come in here as I'm doing now, change these settings, and then use a way through some basic batch files to deploy a set of these XML files. So here's Pipe Designer again, some of these options, highlighting rule violation, what's the precision, I've got it set to 3 decimals, perhaps suitable in a metric situation. Perhaps I want to work at 2 decimals, okay? All those little things can be deployed and standardized in that way. Pipe Designer has some powerful options in here for setting cover over pipes. How it calculates that could certainly be something you want to control. That is in options as well. So again, with some of these apps, when in doubt, just open them up, look in options and think, oh yeah, that would be nice to have it that way every time, right? By the way, those XML settings, if I go into here, I can see that XML file. This is the Pipe Designer user settings. Again, a simple XML file. If I open this up, you can also edit them in this way. So what's the minimum cover? This is defaulting to 3. We could have a default to 7.5 or 8.5. You can edit that stuff in here and then deploy this file in that way. Or you can change it through the app, and when you do so, it'll update. So for example, this is saved at 12:11 because I just opened it and saved it a bit ago. My time right now is 12:12. If I hit OK to this, right then and there, it updates and writes to that settings file, okay? So the settings file is definitely an app, a user settings file, and it will continue to update with the things that would vary from one user to the next. But giving the user a starting point, or just giving yourself a starting point is important. And so that's why deploying that can be helpful. Let's take a look at another one of the major apps in here, AutoGrader. There's a few app settings in here as well. AutoGrader automates all sorts of feature line editing and updating through something called grading families. Now, how those grading families behave, there is some, again, default behavior in here. So AutoGrader, for example, will control what layers and styles and sites are assigned to your feature lines that get created by the tool. You can default this to certain styles, sites, and layers settings in here, okay? So this is gonna read from your current drawing. So you would open up your template, for example, again, if you're deploying this to a team of people, or if you're just doing it for yourself, just open this in your project drawing, set this stuff. And so each time you create a grading family, it will default to some of this stuff. It helps with speed of actual work, but it also helps with standardization in your drawings, which all you CAD manager types I know is a constant struggle. This has to do with if we're targeting a surface. For example, I've got a grading family in here that will do a slope to surface, targeting an existing surface. This daylight frequency or target frequency is something I can default. And it would kind of vary, right? If I'm perhaps designing large landfills, really large scale things, maybe my frequency would be higher. Something real detailed like parking lots in a commercial project, I would probably dial this down a little bit. Now it can be changed for each grading family, but when a new grading family is created, what are those default settings? That's what these are about, the default settings for grading families. Again, in that CAD manager role, if you're not sure, is there a standard I can choose for this? Then just leave it as default. You know, I've configured the applications to have kind of reasonable starting values, but depending on the area you work in and the type of projects you do, it will certainly vary. Okay, a few other apps here. Earthwork Processor has a lot of settings in it. If I go ahead and open this up, Earthwork Processor, this calculates earthwork volumes as well as labels and tables all of the results. In options, you have a lot of control on default cut and fill factors, okay? What's the table precision out here? And there's actually multiple tabs in here. A lot of this automates a ton of the behavior for Earthwork Processor. Earthwork Processor generates a lot of different surfaces. Surfaces need a surface style assigned to them. There's some default behavior in here about assigning no display styles. But as you develop some workflows with Earthwork Processor, you're going to want to come in here and default some of this. Earthwork Processor also labels Earthwork volumes. It can generate an AutoCAD table. It can generate Excel exports. Okay, the appearance of that label is all in here. Let me give it one quick example. Let's make an Earthwork set. I'm going to use a filter to reference a set of polylines out here. If I go ahead and run this, it's generating cuts and fills. Now I can turn on labeling for each one of these. Okay, now that's a per drawing setting, a choice per Earthwork set. But how that label appears, that's an app-wide setting. So if I jump into labels and reports, let's say I want to show the name of it, subgrade depth, cut and fill, and I don't have any stripping. Okay, I set it in there and then I run this, and it's going to generate labels based on that setting. Here's those labels. Let's close out of this. Okay, that's that app setting. Now, a user can always come in here and override it for a given project, but it's going to remember that per app. So if you're in options, it's an app-wide setting. So let's come in here and let's just add a few values. Okay, we can change the order of things. Okay, and then all of this stuff, if I double click on cut, I've got units and precision formatting for my actual label that will be created in my drawing. Do I want it to say cut? I want to say cut volume. Okay, all of that kind of stuff can be customized in here, and again, deployed to a team of users or just defaulted for yourself as you use this app multiple times. I'm going to run this again, and we'll see some of those labels update. So I told it to show the name of the proposed and existing surface. Okay, those labels would certainly be something you perhaps label in a standard or at least consistent way. So Earthwork Processor is a big one. Same thing for the tables, like I was showing. What information do you want to show in the table? Then there's global settings down here for those labels and tables about decimal characters. So Canadian users, you might be using different formatting there. Lots of options as well. The CTZ tools are used by companies across the world, primarily in North America, but our tools are meant to work in many, many different standards, imperial standards or metric standards. So always keep that in mind. All right, Corridor Mapper. Corridor Mapper is a tool that automates targeting in your corridors. It does this by linking subassemblies to layers, to styles, or to object names in your drawing, okay? As soon as we're leveraging layers and styles for something, whether you're just drawing a polyline or using Corridor Mapper, right? Some semblance of layer and style standards make sense. You guys are doing some of this for corridor modeling already, those of you using corridors, right? We're just leveraging that standard in a better way now. For example, I've got a style assigned to this offset alignment, and the style is named offsets. If I go back into Corridor Mapper, one of the great things about Corridor Mapper is it will link any number of subassemblies. You can link them or select them all at once, and then you can choose any number of layers, styles, or object properties. In this case, I'm going to just choose offsets. Okay, so the naming of that right there is important, right? Maybe you use all caps for style names that should typically be referenced that you would reference or that your teams would reference, so that they know that it should link. Quarter Mapper also has an auto map feature where if a style or layer name is the same as the subassembly name, it'll automatically link those. You don't have to leverage that, but the naming of those styles and layers certainly aids in that. So that's a little bit on the template configuration settings, but I wanted to mention that before we jumped into options here, so that you understood what a corridor mapper does. So there's a few things in here about new corridor defaults, the assignment method, what kind of object types should be included. If they reference a particular layer, should it pick up only polylines or only alignments on that layer, right? So we can really control that at an app-wide level. Finally, let's look at Label Genie. This is a robust labeling tool. There's a number of standards in here that come into play, but in terms of the app settings, if we look in options here, it's a fairly small amount of settings. It's really just remembering the size and position, but this is probably one of the key things, and this shows up in other apps as well. We'll talk more about it in a bit, but those app templates that we're going to talk about, the path on where those are found is set in here. Let's talk app templates. This is probably the biggest part of configuration of the CIM Project Suite that really pays off. Some of those app settings you might have thought, well, yeah, okay, that's handy and all, but where does it really pay off? It's in some of these app templates. So let's go back to that pipe planner drawing. In Pipe Planner, we can do all sorts of things. We can generate custom tables of any type. We can export to Excel, run analyses there, and sync them back and update our pipe networks, as well as dozens of other types of tables and schedules we might want to generate. If you've built out a table in this way, and it's as simple as just grabbing parameters like this, you can change the order and all that. This information can be saved out to a template. It works nearly the same in every app that has this. So maybe this is a manhole schedule. I can save that out. It's a JSON format, but it saves it as a PP, Pipe Planner file extension. Okay, that is saved out. It now shows up in my list because my path is set to the location that I saved it at. And so this is how it would work. If you've built out different templates, you can simply choose those, click load, and then those settings, both the parts and the properties, load for a given template that you saved out. I can go to that manhole schedule one. Let's say you had loaded this in a brand new drawing and everything was empty. In fact, let's do that. Clear out all the parts. Okay, I'm in a new project, new drawing. I need to build out one of my manhole schedules. Just click load, boom, it pulls everything in, export to Excel, you're on your way. It's that easy, that quick to save that stuff out. So this is Pipe Planner. Right now I'm defaulting to saving that out here. Here's those Pipe Planner templates. They can be saved on the server. Excuse me, not that one, that's the app user settings, these three right here. They can be saved on a server where everyone sees them, okay? And then if you're in a CAD support role, you can set this path before you roll out CIM Project Suite to everyone. Or if it's out already, you can just push this whole set of XML files that you have sitting in the app data roaming CTC folder. You could overwrite their existing settings, XML files with this. So you could put these app templates in this location or put it on the server somewhere. It's up to you. Some of you might be doing a local deployment of your standards, something I've been a big advocate for a while, or you keep all your standards on the server. Either way, extremely valuable. If you're exporting with Pipe Planner for storm analysis in Excel, absolutely build out some templates here so that when you need to do that again or teams need to do it again, it's readily accessible. And you just choose it like this, load it, and you're on your way. Plays a big role in standardization of tables and reports that you might generate. AutoGrader is a big one, as we mentioned, for templates, application templates. If I open up AutoGrader, I've got a few grading families built in here already. This is a building site pond. If I run this, it's gonna grade out my pond and put everything in the surface. Okay. That group of settings, slopes, distances, layers, and style set, all of that stuff can be saved out to a template. Click save right here. We'll call this pond type 1. Now, if I click open, load grading family from an external file, it's going to go right to that location where those templates are saved. So it works a little different than Pipe Planner. It's not a drop down. But where the default save location is and where the default open from location is, that is saved again in the app settings. And again, this can be deployed through that XML file. I'm giving an example of it. Curve is one of the great applications for this. Let's build out a curve family. Might have a few different curve standards, but what might be common is that you're referencing parent feature lines that are on a standard layer. Okay. When your users or you are building out grading of curve, you're going to put certain feature lines on certain layers, and you're going to give them certain styles. Okay. Everything in here is going to save to that app template. Now, what is it supposed to do with that? It's supposed to make a top of curve for me, go a distance to relative elevation, whatever kind of curve standard I'm dealing with here, and a back of curve. Again, a 0% slope. And what layers and styles should those get? What's common is we will print back of curve, gutter line, and lip or flange of curve, but not top. So for example, I might want to standardize and say, well, the layer for top of curve goes to something different. Maybe it's like a no plot layer. Do I have one in here? Yeah, no plot layer. But my back of curve always goes to just a regular curve layer, okay? We can program this stuff in here in the same way you do in the settings tab of Civil 3D, the way you do in your layer manager. We can program this stuff in here so that all of this stuff, once it's saved out to an external template like this, curve type 2, users in other projects, other drawings can simply come in here and load this. And it's as simple as this. Let's delete this, this family. I no longer have that curve gradient family. I'll click load, grab that, and all of those settings come right into, where's that? There it is. Okay, so they're saving out to those external templates. Now, if you think about those app user settings files, those were XML files, right? And here's that for AutoGrader. These are JSON files. So if you like editing things from the back end, you might find it easier sometimes if you've got a whole set of AutoGrader grading family templates you've built out for your teams or for yourself. But then you changed some layering standards in your template, right? And you can run a find replace in a whole bunch of these JSON files at once, or just come in here and edit it this way. You might find that easier, faster than editing through the interface. But the interface, everything just writes to this JSON file format. So AutoGrader is a real big one for templates. There is one other unique piece about AutoGrader. that families that are created in here are actually saved to the current DWG or DWT. So if you wanted, instead of having external templates, you could open your DWT, and if there's some standard grading family templates that, or grading families that you would use over and over, you can just have it so every time you make a new drawing from your template, there's 2 or 3 or 4 grading families that are already loaded in there. Now, it would be a template, a DWT you created it from, there wouldn't be feature lines in it yet, right? But once you had created some of those parent feature lines, you could run the grading family and everything would update based on those family settings. So app templates, like I said, are a big piece of configuring the CIM Project Suite. Many on the phone here might be just daily users. You're not supporting other users. It's just as valuable if you're building this stuff out for yourself. I know you're going from one project to the next. You're grading curve multiple times, ponds, you have, what have you, right? No sense in recreating that stuff over and over, or worse yet, potentially making a mistake and entering the wrong values. Get it standardized, save it out to app templates, and you're on your way. Earthwork Processor is the app for earthwork volume calculation. This is one that really makes sense to standardize as well. You can save out an earthwork set to a template here. It's a JSON file format again, and it could be something overall cuts, fills. And then when you click the open, it'll go to that path where those app templates are saved. And again, it's the same in each app, the path where those templates are found. So recommendations on this, what you might be saving to the template, some filtering settings. Okay, so what polylines or feature lines does the app pull in to calculate the earthwork volumes? Just build some of that out in here. Make it really easy for yourself or other users the next time. But basically everything you see in this earthwork set will save to it. Now, a thing to note, if I chose by selection, I selected certain objects in the drawing for my earthwork set, and this goes for AutoGrader as well. If I manually selected them, that's a finite list, a static list. If I save this template out, it's not going to remember that. The concept with templates is that you can load these settings from one drawing to the next, okay? This application, when I close it and reopen it, it's remembering all of these objects by a handle ID. That handle ID doesn't exist in that next project, that next drawing I go to. So if you're going by selection, this will all be empty when you load that template. If you go by filter, now that's a dynamic filter, and whatever drawing you load this in, whatever objects might be on the earthwork layer, it will then pull those in. So it makes the templates flexible from one project to the next, where it's not necessarily the same set of data or same quantity of objects you're working with. Let's look at Label Genie. Label Genie is, like I said, a robust tool for all sorts of different labeling options. This is probably one of the biggest candidates for app templates. So much of your labeling can be standardized in a certain way. I mean, you built out label styles, perhaps some default layers that stuff goes on, but how you label that, that's where Label Genie comes in. So for example, I've got a whole series of templates built out. And by the way, any of this stuff, I'm happy to share with you guys. If you want any of the drawings I'm using here, or any of the app templates that I'm showing off, you can always email us and we will send you this stuff. It's not gonna work exactly for your standards, but you can take it as kind of a starting point and work with it from there, if that's helpful to you. But they're pretty straightforward. So I've got a bunch of templates in here, and I want to do surface spot elevations on lot lines. I choose that, and I load. and then it configures these settings, including layer settings, what feature lines do I want to label with a surface spot, what styles do I want to use, okay? Maybe I loaded the template and it sets most everything right, but I want some of it to be different. So all the different label scenarios, you can just save them out to templates, and then you can very easily load them right up here. And this is a new residential plan here. I'm going to label all of those spot elevations. You can see them all show up there. I'm going to label slopes, surface slopes on lot lines. I'll click load on this. Sets it to slope all my layers and styles and everything the way I want. Simply add it, update my labels, and all of that stuff comes in. It's not that you can't run Label Genie and choose that stuff each time, but a lot of times it's going to be the same each time, right? So save it out to a template. If there's other people who can use those templates, deploy those templates to them. So yeah, Label Genie is one where you very likely would have a lot of different templates like this. Finally, Data Wizard, I won't go into it into detail, but it behaves the same kind of way. Generating legends or QTO reports, you name it. All the settings in Data Wizard from your source drawings, which objects you're generating a legend from, what information you're pulling from there, how you want to format it. All this information, you can save this out to a Data Wizard template and load that at any point down the road. You can load it right up here at the start. So it behaves a little bit different. This is a bit of an older application. We kind of refined how some of this worked in the newer applications, but the concept's still the same, external files for templates. All right, let's touch on one last category here, which is your actual DWT. What do you need to do to that, if anything, to optimize how your CIM Project Suite works for you? It's pretty simple stuff. Remember when we were back here with AutoGrader? For my pond, I've got a layer here that I draw my baseline for my pond on. And then in AutoGrader, I tell it to go to some different layer, different style for these offset feature lines, okay? As you build out a few templates for AutoGrader, it'll come to you which layers and styles you might need. And it's not a lot, it's just a few layers that you might want. You very likely have some of them already. It's just that now that we're programming them into a template, you know, it makes sense to think about them and standardize a little bit more. Earthwork processor is similar to AutoGrader in that way. If you're loading a template that always grabs polyline objects on a particular layer, you want to have those layers in your drawing. So for example, I've got some earthwork layers in here. Put those in your template. As you or other users are creating polylines or feature lines to generate those different hold down regions across the site, those layers are there, they're ready to go, and you're off and running. Corridor mapper, I touched on that a little bit. I think, you know, experienced corridor modelers are always probably already standardizing, you know, when they, like I'm using conditionals for some driveways, right? You're probably used to already having a layer that you put those driveway polylines on. In this case, I've got a drop curb layer, okay? So think through some of these workflows that you would use, because again, so much of what CIM Project Suite does is automate so much of that stuff that you're doing manually. If we're going to automate something, we have to standardize it. It's kind of there's a strong correlation there, right? With automation comes standardization. If you're going to make it so I don't have to choose all these things along the way and do it manually, well, then you got to program in ahead of time what layers, what styles and settings should be used to generate or do whatever I'm trying to do. Automate targeting in my corridor in this example here. Data Wizard is one that is probably one of the most dependent on DWT customization. Data Wizard can generate legends, it can do QTO. A common thing for that is to leverage layer description. And let me show you what I mean by that. If you're going to generate a legend or a QTO report in Excel, okay, the information that shows up in Excel, depending on the object, if it's a Kogel point, if it's a polyline, depending on the property that you're using, it can be a little tricky. So if I'm after some quantity properties like this, okay, something like the layer description might be important to me, or if I want that to show up in my legend. Okay, so I go into it in detail in other webcasts, but layer description is a seldom used functional property. What I mean by functional, it's used as kind of referenced. Maybe you fill out some layer descriptions so you know, so users know what layers to put things on. Data Wizard leverages layer description and basically any other property to standardize legends, QTO, and things like that. Layer description is one of those things that's universal across all AutoCAD and Civil 3D objects. Any one of those objects need to be on a layer. If we want to leverage a description for that object, we could pull style name, we could pull layer name, all these kinds of things. But Data Wizard works great with layer description. So to look at some of those more detailed videos on Data Wizard, I've got a deep dive on configuring Data Wizard for your use. So definitely check that out. The last one I want to talk about is Sheet Generator. This is the one that probably second to Data Wizard, but requires some setup in your template. Sheet Generator is a robust plan and profile creation tool. It replaces the view frames tool set up here. Now, what's required to make Sheet Generator work? There's again a few layers and styles. Sheet Generator works by laying out polylines, using rectangular blocks, and then these polylines here are like match line representations, okay? So you have to choose layers for this different stuff when you're running the tool. Those of you who use this, you've noticed that, right? You want to build some of those layers into your template. The other thing you need to do, this is probably one of the key pieces for Sheet Generator. The way Sheet Generator works is based on a rectangular block on your sheet template, your standard template, or multiple templates, right? You'd have different scales and things like that. It has to be a rectangular block with an insertion point on the left midpoint. That block is then referenced when laying out things in plan view like this. That's how we know what our sheets are going to look like. Let's make some profile views. Let's adjust those profile views to match the elevations and station ranges that we want. Hit OK to that. Got one extra profile view here. We'll get rid of that. And then another kind of standards portion of plan and profile sheet creation is how that profile grid lands in your sheet, right? So I've got another block here as well that basically is the box or the window that my profile views need to fit in. Part of Sheet Generator's workflow is to place those on your profile view so that you know how those profile views will land in your sheets. Now, Sheet Generator does a few other things as well. I chose the wrong settings a little bit, but what you can do is use a masking block. And you can see this if I choose this masking block right here. This is a standard AutoCAD block that you reference inside Sheet Generator. I'll go back into that tool. Right here, I can leverage a masking block, and it's kind of a cheater way where we allow you to have some grid spacing beyond the end of your displayed data. And all it is a wipeout block. This is what I mean by the sample drawings. We can give these to you guys if you want. But it's a simple block. You can kind of configure it to your colors and layer standards and so forth. But that gets placed right here. Some of my spacing's off a little bit. I wouldn't normally look like that, but this profile view, right? In fact, it goes beyond that. So if you're interested in doing that in your sheets, that's another piece, a block that you would want in your template. So there's that block. The important one, the required one, is the blocks on your sheet template. And then when it comes time to actually creating the layouts, we also reference some of those same layers and blocks again. Okay, here's layers that the view shapes are on. Those are those things we saw in our plan views layout. We reference the print area blocks. Those are the things from our sheet templates. And then we can also insert north arrows and have it rotate that for us. And it'll also insert match lines for us. What your match line looks like, certainly some of your own standards. But this is another piece. If you want to show match lines in your sheets, you have to reference that block in here. It's an attributed block, and you can automatically populate the attributes through this tool. Let's go ahead and create those sheets. There's a number of other settings along the way in Sheet Generator, some kind of X and Y offsets and things like that. What you'll want to do to deploy perhaps a preconfigured standard, preconfigured setup for Sheet Generator is not just have these blocks and layers in the drawing, but also run through there and play with the offsets of how your profile view places and that kind of stuff. And all those settings, again, right, they save back to these user app settings. So anything you set in Sheet Generator is remembered the next time you run it. Here's that user app settings file that was just saved recently. Okay. I've got the wrong sheets here. Sorry, wrong file I'm referencing there. But the, yeah, that's the third category there, the Civil 3D template settings. So jumping in your DWT, configuring that stuff appropriately so that as you're choosing layers and blocks in that workflow, they're ready to go and you're on your way. So if you're wondering how you get the CIM Project Suite, maybe all this is new to you and you haven't been using it yet. You can go download a trial and contact your reseller. In the US, that's ATG. Canada, that's SolidCAD, and outside of US and Canada, you can just contact CTC Software directly. So this is our flagship product for Civil 3D called the CIM Project Suite. As you see, there's tons of tools in it to automate a lot of tasks in Civil 3D. There's a little bit of configuration. What I suggest with some of this stuff, if you perhaps don't have the time for it, don't have the know-how for it, contact your reseller about it. ATG and SolidCAD provide great service on configuring your CIM Project Suite for you. If you don't want to do it yourself or you don't have the time for it, they can set that up for you. So be sure to reach out to them in that way if you desire. The trials, like I mentioned, you can get them from ctcsoftware.com. So with that, I'll open up to any questions you guys might have. I didn't see any come in. hopefully that means you guys weren't sleeping and I was answering your questions along the way. But I'll hang out here for a few minutes and wait for any questions that might come in. If you want to refer back to this later on, it will be posted to our YouTube page within a day or so. So be sure to check that out. And some of these key tools, Data Wizard I mentioned, Sheet Generator, we have deep dive configuration recordings on that stuff. This was kind of an overview of the entire CIM Project Suite, but we have deep dive ones where necessary. A few comments come in, one about, a lot of information to process. Just start small. If you've got a certain app that you and your coworkers are using, see if there's some configuration on that one that makes sense to optimize. If you're using AutoGrader or Label Genie, those two absolutely benefit from templates. A fantastic way to standardize and quickly repeat those procedures. So I like to think of some of these apps as, out of the gate, first get them on your machine and they're pretty cool, but they almost get better with time, right? Because as you get more familiar with different workflows with them, you build out templates for them, right? And they really kind of become part of your daily routine. They almost have more benefit as you further implement them just because of that configuration and standardization. Yeah, question. The deep dive into the sheet set tools, absolutely. I will pass that link on to you, Charles, so you have that at your fingertips. So I don't see any other questions coming in. So thanks again, everyone. I hope this was helpful for you. It's certainly kind of a behind the curtain kind of webcast. But that's part of it, right? To make Civil 3D and AutoCAD work for us and our teams, you got to look behind that curtain and roll up your sleeves and dig in. So with that, thanks everyone. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.